Hello, I am Barbara Ash, Executive Vice President of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, President of the Chamber's Foundation, and National Director of the Veteran Institute for Procurement. On behalf of these organizations, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Increasing Business and Serving Federal Needs During a Crisis. As the impact of COVID-19 continues to reshape the way we do business, the federal government is changing processes to quickly make decisions and meet the immediate and ongoing needs here and abroad. These needs include cybersecurity, IT, engineering, health, staffing, construction, and services and products that not just address the pandemic, but also keep the nation functioning. In this information-packed webinar, Gloria Larkin, President and CEO of Targetgov, will explain what you can do right now and in the coming weeks and months to step up your pace and build business opportunities as a prime contractor, subcontractor, and teaming partner. Key takeaways today will include understanding exactly what the government says it will do to expedite acquisitions during a national emergency, information on how to use the specific emergency-related increased simplified acquisition thresholds to obtain immediate contracts, and the tools you will need to increase business. The slides and audio from today's webinar will be made available on the Chamber and VIP's resource page following the broadcast. Please submit your questions throughout today's presentation. We will try to address some of them at the end of today's webinar, and any questions that we cannot answer live, we will submit to the presenter after the broadcast and send the answers out to you when they are available. Now, it is truly a pleasure to introduce Gloria Larkin. Gloria is the President and CEO of Targetgov, which provides expert consulting services and business development products that have directly resulted in clients winning over $6 billion in federal contracts. She is the author of Basic Guide to Government Contracting, co-author of the Veteran Business Guide, How to Build a Successful Government Contracting Business, and of hundreds of federal contracting articles in print and online. Gloria is an instructor at VIP and a guest speaker at MCC events and programs. As you can see, you are in excellent hands today. So with that, I will now turn today's webinar over to Gloria Larkin.
Thank you, Barbara. It is exciting to be here, even though we're dealing with something that we hope is a once-in-a-lifetime situation. And I wanted to clarify what we will cover today. The good news is the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce has an extraordinary base of businesses that can help you with the CARES Act and the Payroll Protection Program and all of those resources that are in place to help you with your business. So I will not be addressing those issues. Instead, focusing in on government contracting and what can we do right now, even living through this challenge, in order to grow our business and support the government customer so that we can all move forward and come out the other side. So today we will indeed talk about what's changed in the federal contracting market as a result of COVID and how agencies are differing. And I had a little bit of a heads up today that not only do we have contractors of every type and size business on today's call, but we also have government representatives as well. So we do look forward to your questions, your comments coming in throughout today's session, and at the end would like to address as many of them as we can. The expediting acquisitions is kind of an unusual concept because normally the government does not work very quickly on acquisitions. And there's a reason for that with the federal acquisition regulation. So we are going to talk about how, in practical terms, you can take steps today to join this expedited acquisition landscape. And one of those ways is understanding what's changed about the simplified acquisition threshold and how to leverage it and take advantage of it. And then the tools, we will start by taking a look at the agencies and what they're doing to address their expedited needs. And then at the end, we will focus in on you and what tools you can start using right now to help you meet the needs and be found by the government decision makers. So first, what changed? As of March the 13th, 2020, the president declared a national emergency. And this date is what has now driven the acquisition changes. By declaring a national emergency, it has affected every agency, whether it's Department of Defense or civilian agencies or the intelligence agencies as well, not just from how we serve the government, meaning can we show up at work, but how they are acquiring their services and products that they'll need, not just for addressing the unique requirements of COVID, but also because of the needs of still running the government. That does not stop because COVID happens. So I wanted you to get a feel for what a contracting officer is hearing. And this is literally a decision tree that is in place to help contracting officers on existing contracts. First, we'll start with existing contracts, and then we'll move into new contract opportunities for you. So with this decision tree in place, it's telling a contracting officer the various steps that they'll need to incorporate into their decision-making process as to whether or not they can continue the contract and how this impacts you as a current contractor. You're going to see pretty dramatically in about 3 slides. So in understanding this decision-making tree, it helps you to communicate with your contracting officers. So for instance, in that first diamond, about the 3rd point down where it says, can work on the contract be completed virtually? If it's yes, you should communicate that proactively with your contracting officer. Don't wait for them to contact you. Be as proactive as possible with your current customers. And you can frame it as part of your quality control process. You know, the process you have in place to address the what ifs. Well, this is a pretty big what if. What if the country has to close down because of a pandemic? So by being proactive and reaching out to your contracting officers on your current contracts, and then we'll talk about future contracts in a few minutes, you are letting them know that you're addressing their decision-making process as they're going through it. So can you work remotely? Let them know. Yes, if you can. If you cannot, what are the options that you have in place to continue working? Or if you have no options in place, Let's say, for instance, you must work on a government site and you're not allowed in the government site. That's an issue beyond your control. So how do you communicate that to your contracting officer? You can read through the rest of this decision-making tree, and we even have quoted the FAR clauses on excusable delays, extensions, suspension of work, stop work orders, etc., so that you can make yourself familiar with and have substantive conversations of the alternatives with the contracting officers where you have current contracts. Another update on existing contracts would be on the next slide, which will go into detail on potential impacts. So many of the contracts have no potential for impact, and we can continue business as usual. Please be proactive. Let your contracting officer know that you can continue on with business as usual in order to support them in addressing the contract needs. But then you see the various alternatives. Potential impact, but can be performed remotely or virtually. On-site, mission critical and essential in number 3. And then the alternatives with number 4, where they must be performed on-site but are not mission critical or essential. So this is from the contracting officer point of view. So under number 4, as a contractor, how can you proactively deal with the challenges that you're experiencing? How can you communicate those challenges to your contracting officer? Do you need potential alternative sources for products or people? Because as employees have the need to call out for whatever reason, what are your alternatives in bringing in new people to fill those needs? The more you can communicate your situation with your contracting officer, no matter what the situation is, positive or negative, the best thing to do is communicate frequently and in writing. Always back it up with writing, even after the phone calls, so that you have a running record of everything that's been discussed. You'll need that moving forward, especially when you hear what has happened from a contracting standpoint in just a minute. But right now, I want to give you a little bit of good news. As a result of the national emergency, the government is now mandated to accelerate payments to small business primes, and the primes are mandated to accelerate payments to their small business subcontractors. I took a snip of this actual notice from the government, and you can see the date, April 6th, 2020. I'm not sure if you can see where the cursor is, but it's right near William Clark's name. And this came through the Civilian Agency Acquisition Council, and it is in accordance with FAR 1.404, where it states that accelerated payments to contractors that are small businesses and small business subcontractors being paid by their prime contractors. You know, just as an update, I went through over 311 pages in 30 different documents that have been published in just the last 10 days in order to put this together for you. And these situations are changing constantly. If you would like any of the supporting documents, please reach out to me directly. You know, this is too big of a resource to just post them for you, but I'd be happy to send them individually if you'd like any of the supporting documents. So the great news is the government is supporting small business primes and subs by mandating the accelerated payment timeline. And this update is why I started off with existing contracts, because now no cost extensions are allowed on any existing contract. So if you hold an existing contract that was active as of March 31st of this year, and it's scheduled to expire anytime before December 31st, the contracting officer is allowed to automatically extend this contract. Automatically extend it. So again, you would be well served to be in touch constantly with your contracting officer, noting what issues, challenges, and the fact that you can continue to perform on the contract, so that then they feel confident in making an automatic extension when your current contract expires anytime from today through December 31st of this year. This is a huge issue for anyone currently working on contracts. Make sure that you address the needs that you have, whether that's finding replacement personnel, replacement products that are being a challenge. This is going to be able to allow you, if you're performing well on the contract, to see added life on that contract before it ends or before it goes to recompete. And the bullet at the bottom, TAA waiver is allowed. This is also a direct response to this pandemic, because certain products of all types, not just COVID-related products, but products of all types, are going through a supply chain crunch. The TAA Trade American Agreement Act is waived during this national emergency. But be careful. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can automatically substitute products that don't satisfy the TAA. Always communicate with your contracting officer the situation, so that if you can no longer find those products and you can only get them through non-approved countries, make sure to communicate the situation first with your contracting officer and let them know, I'm sure they already do, but just in case, that the TAA waiver has been applied because the president has declared a national emergency. Again, if you need source documents, let me know. Happy to send them to you. So now we've had some overall scenarios. Let's start drilling down to specific targets. So the Department of Defense has a very specific website links set up during this time. The Department of Defense contracting for COVID-19 information. Again, I just snipped it from the original document. And these are very important websites, because if you have products and services that can be used to address the COVID situation with the Department of Defense, this is how you reach out to them. The acquisition.gov has an extraordinary resource list, and this is literally changing every day. That is the second bullet down, where you see acquisition.gov/coronavirus. These will take you to very specific websites within the Department of Defense and other civilian agencies as well, to address the coronavirus needs that have come up. The third bullet is really quite important, and that is within the System for Award Management, SAM, our legacy SAM system, there is a disaster response registry. Now, for those of you who are part of the VIP program, we've had a chance to chat about this already. And we talked about absolutely indicating, yes, that your company can provide services and products in the event of a disaster. Nowhere did we have this in mind, that this was actually going to be the next disaster, not a hurricane, nothing else, not terrorism, but literally a pandemic. So it is critical that this is what the government says. It's not me saying this. It's critical that suppliers attending to provide medical devices and medical personal protective equipment register there. So make sure you, within your SAM registration in the disaster response registry, which you'll see in just a minute, that you do answer it. And we'll talk about exactly how to answer that in just a moment. And then there is another acquisition, DoD acquisition website, industry portal, where you can fill out a short form to provide information on the way you can support the current response, whether it's for cybersecurity, it's for IT services, engineering services, staffing services, not just medical related support and services. So this is very important that you have indicated on these various websites. So action item for you today would be to make a note, download the PowerPoint when it's available, and it definitely will be available, so that then you can go through each one of these slides, visit each location, and make sure your company is in each one of these sites and you're indicating the services and products that you're providing. So let's take a look at Navy. This came out as a press release directly from the Navy. And it's interesting how they titled it, Navy hoping to keep some acquisition momentum during COVID-19. But the focus, and I circled those in red, was quickening acquisitions later during the crisis to keep programs on targets, speeding up contract awards. So what can you do in order to help the Navy quicken the acquisition and speed up the contract awards and address any vulnerabilities in their supply chain? So translating this, it means, what contract vehicles do you have that the Navy uses? Even if you're not on a current contract, if you have Seaport E or the GSA schedule or any of the vehicles that the Navy is using, you would be very well served in proactively reaching out to specific targets who need the services that you're providing. If you have a sole source ability as well, whether you are a hub zone, a woman-owned business, or an 8A company, the Navy can use sole source through socioeconomic certifications. But don't just call them up and say, hey, I'm an 8A, what have you got for me? Please don't do that and embarrass yourself and waste their time. Instead, you need to do your homework first. And the Navy has forecasts available for you. The Navy has recompetes that you can research to find out what's coming up so that you can start placing yourself in front of the right people who want to quicken the acquisitions and speed up these contract awards. But as an example, I wanted to use the Missile Defense Agency. So here, the MDMA on their Teams Next website, which is available at the website up in the upper right-hand column, mda.mil, they're telling you that they have these upcoming opportunities available. Whether they're in engineering, IT, cyber, professional services, they're saying if they're set aside, women-owned, SDVOSB at the top of the professional services. Ideally, you will identify 3 or more opportunities to discuss with these decision makers as you're reaching out to them. These are very good sized contracts, as you can see. So in looking at their forecast, I mentioned the forecast earlier for the Navy. This is the forecast for the MDMA. In identifying those opportunities where you have a fit and you have the vehicle that they want to use, this will help them accelerate the acquisitions and ideally leverage sole source ability if you have that as a socioeconomic vehicle. Now, in the Department of Homeland Security, I wanted to use FEMA as the example. And there is a how to help page specifically on their coronavirus how to help, where FEMA is looking for vendors and those wishing to offer other products or services. So it really is your responsibility and burden, and I know that this is a burden. However, we're talking about being proactive to find, pursue, and ultimately win business to grow your company and keep your team employed. It's mandatory that you visit each one of these target websites and fill out what they need to know. They're creating their own separate databases of contractors who are willing to make this effort to give them the kinds of information they need to find all types of services and products, both the medical oriented as well as all of the other services and products they need. And we've heard about the Defense Production Act quite a bit in the news. And this is being applied to support all types of acceleration and contracting expansion efforts. The challenge, though, is how it's actually happening. So what you want to do is look at each target's website. The FEMA website is right here. I had earlier the MDA as well as DOD websites, and we'll have a few more coming up. So you can't chase them all. No one does that. You want to focus in on those that you have the best relationships already, as well as the best match for the services and products they need. Enrolling into the Health and Human Services, I tell you, this is really a wonderful informational site at the mysbcx.hhs.gov website. This is a relatively new website to engage with small businesses. And HHS is making every effort they can in order to open up the doors to small businesses in working with them. Right now, today, these are available. As of yesterday, this is very, very fresh information at the website that you see, the mysbcx.hhs.gov. The spending trends and target marketing information for every one of the agencies under the HHS umbrella is available to you as a PDF. So if you're targeting Health and Human Services or any of the sub-agencies under that umbrella, make sure to use this website and these PDFs so that you can identify the spending trends and look for the forecast of opportunities so that you can do your homework before you reach out to any decision makers at Health and Human Services. Save yourself time and effort by doing this homework first, so that then when you do reach out to the Office of Small Business, the OSDBU, at each of the different agencies, you are well prepared with at least 3 or more opportunities that your services or products can provide, whether they're medical to address the COVID needs or otherwise, IT, cyber, products, chairs, tables, desks, computers, whatever it is that they need and have listed in their forecast of upcoming needs. And even USAID is being very proactive on sending out their updated COVID guidance for USAID partners. So you'll notice that every agency is really fine-tuning how they're communicating with industry. And this is kudos to the agencies that are making this level of effort in sending out frequently asked questions, in sending out methods and processes to engage through new databases of vendors and contractors. So the more you can focus in on those targets who need what you provide, get your capability statements ready and fine-tuned, and we're going to talk about that, how that's different now. Now we're going to talk about it. And it relates to this, the Simplified Acquisition Thresholds. Recently, the threshold was raised to $10,000 for micro purchases. Well, that is now $20,000 in support of a nationally declared emergency. And the references are noted as such. The $20,000 amount is for any contract to be awarded and performed within the United States. So I focused on these facts and figures for services and products provided within the United States. What this means is anyone with a credit card now has the ability to purchase up to $20,000 per transaction simply by reaching out to a contractor who can provide what they need. They do not necessarily need 3 bids. This is an instant decision, and that is per transaction. So this can absolutely be a great tool for you to use when you're reaching out to targets. I'll tell you how to do that in just a moment. The Simplified Acquisition Threshold was recently expanded to $250,000, $250,000. However, during this national emergency, it is now $750,000. $750,000 is the upper end of the simplified acquisition threshold. That does mean now for contracting officers that anything between $20,000 and $750,000 should be awarded to small business. But they have to know the small business in order to reach out to you and offer these to you, and they have to follow the processes. So how do they find you? So let's say, for instance, you have a range of services and products that you can offer from 0 to 20,000 on the micro purchase side, and then from 20,000 to 750,000 within the simplified acquisition threshold. Okay, now let's get real tactical on how you do this. You know the why. Now let's talk about the how. The tools that you need to have is in SAM, in your SAM registration, there is the Disaster Response Registry search. It is circled in red. This is where many decision makers will go to find the disaster-related services or products they need. In the middle column are the simple search criteria that they can use. These are not great criteria, but it's what they can use. And geographic area, I've exploded so that you can see in the far right column the choices of geographic area, any state, search by state, or even within counties. So this is a mandatory scenario. You saw earlier in a snip that I had taken from a recent document that companies must be registered in SAM and also be registered in the Disaster Response Registry within SAM. However, note that little flexibility with SAM right below that. So things are literally changing every day. And this rule, with the references stated, states that awarding agencies can relax the requirement for SAM registration in order to expeditiously issue funding. However, there is a risk posed by applicants if they're not in SAM. So they're stating they can bend the rules a little bit, but you would be absolutely well served to make sure that your SAM record is not just up to date, but it's also indicative of the Disaster Response Registry, your availability, what you're providing, and the geographic area that you're providing it in. And just as a tip, if you're a small business, don't say any state. Focus in, right now we can't fly. Right now, transportation is difficult. Right now, this is not easy to travel in order to perform the services or provide the products that you need. Focus in on the geography where you can guarantee you can provide your services or products that the government needs. So what are the other tools that you can use? This is hugely important. We've talked about your SAM registration. Then, of course, you have your SBA profile. And there are agency registrations. And earlier, I gave you about 4 different registrations, DOD, HHS, etc. Do not use generic terms when you are listing your key words and phrases. If the government is giving you fields that you can put in keywords and phrases, being very specific on exactly what you offer, your chances of being found skyrocket. So you want to use the exact terms that the customers themselves use. And let's say, for instance, Health and Human Services, let's drill down into the CDC. They may use certain keywords and phrases describing the cybersecurity that they're looking for assistance with, whereas the Missile Defense Agency is going to use very different keywords and phrases because their mission is very different. So where do you find them? You find exact keywords and phrases in the statements of work. In recent RFPs that target has advertised or awarded, go right to the targets that you're focusing in on and mine those statements of work for keywords and phrases that they use to describe your services or products. Why do you want to get this specific and not be generic? Because the government has created a new tool for themselves to use. And I have the website noted at that bottom bullet, hallways.cap.gsa.gov. This is a website built for acquisition professionals and federal buyers to use for a lot of different tools. But what we're interested today in is this is where they find you, through that solutions finder in the red circle. It's not for us to use, this is for the government to use. And this solutions finder scrapes the federal websites and databases like SAM, like your SBA profile. If you have security clearances, it will scrape DSS as well, so that they can find the exact keywords and phrases that they're looking to find. These tools all have a common element, and you will be well served if you spend a little bit of time in creating a keyword resource document where you put the keywords for each individual target that you're going after. So you'll have a set of keywords for NIH. You'll have a different set of keywords for Social Security Administration, a different set of keywords for the Army, a different set of keywords for NSA. And then you will put those keywords and phrases in the various registrations, in your SAM, in your SBA profile, in NSA ARC. If you have any questions about those, I'd be happy to help you understand where and how to put those in the various registrations. The other tools you need right now would be your capability statement. And on that capability statement, you will actually create one for every single different target. So DOD will have a CAPE statement, MDA will have a CAPE statement, NIH will have its own CAPE statement. And know the target's mission. You absolutely want to focus in on that mission of that individual target and how you can answer their needs. And what's different about this CAPE statement is on the back. This is the one time where you should have a 2-page CAPE statement. On the back, you should have a menu with the simplified acquisition services and products detailed on exactly what can you do under $750,000. Give them a menu of the services or products that you provide. What can you provide under the $25,000 limit? Give them that menu. And then what can you provide under the micro purchase threshold of $20,000? You know, think of it this way. If you were going into a restaurant, it's a great restaurant. You heard great things about that restaurant. You go in and you sit down and they look at you and they say, so what do you want? And you don't know what to ask for because you don't know what's good or what they have. So by putting this menu that satisfies the simplified acquisition services and products that you offer on the back of your capability statement, you just made it simple for the government decision maker to understand that you know what they need, you know where they fit, where you fit in with those needs, and you've got the contract vehicles they can use to do business with you right away and accelerate that acquisition process. Do you have sole sourceability in the contract vehicle? Make sure if you don't have it that you're teaming with someone who does. These are action items that you want to write down for yourself. What kinds of contract vehicles do you have? Do you have an IDIQ? Do you have a GSA schedule? Do you have a multiple award contract? And within that, what is the sole sourceability so that then the government can just contract with you without putting it out for bid, which will just take too long right now. Your pipeline needs to be rich, 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 because these needs are changing constantly. Money is shifting around constantly. What you thought your pipeline was solid for may not be solid now, depending on what's happening with your targets. So your pipeline probably needs to be not just 2 times or 3 times larger. It may need to be 5 times larger than before so that you can address all contingencies, meaning budgets shifting around, needs shifting around within that customer. So your pipeline, you want to beef that up right now. This is a perfect time to spend a half a day or so or longer if needed, looking through the forecast, looking through those contracts, starting to position yourself to extend any existing contracts that you have under these new regulations now in play. And I'm going to strongly recommend a CRM system. I really don't care what you use. Frankly, you could start off with an Excel spreadsheet, but you need to start tracking who these decision makers are, when you're reaching out to them, what you're saying to them, who in your company is talking with them. And you can do that kind of in an Excel spreadsheet. You can do it so much better in a bona fide CRM system. As I mentioned, I really don't care what you use. I know there's some really good ones out there. Reach out to me if you'd like a list of the top 40. There's an article that was written. Actually, you could Google this yourself and find it now. Top 40 CRM systems, and that will give you an unbiased look at what they are. By using these tools, you'll start seeing results right now during this crisis in contracting that we have in the United States. And you can start reaching out to your targets and be proactive. Barbara or Amy, do we have questions that you'd like to roll into?
We sure do. This is Barbara, and we have quite a few questions, so it'd be great if we could get to a few of them if we have a few minutes, if you don't mind, Gloria.
Oh, no, that'd be great. We're just on time for it.
Excellent. So here's one that just came in. Can sole source be applied along with the simplified acquisition? And what type of sole source justification do they have to do for a woman-owned small business? Wondering if it's the same difficult sole source justification process like before, or will it be easier to do now?
That has not changed to my knowledge, I have not seen any documents come through from the government saying that the sole source process itself has been changed. So there's a 4-step process in place for women-owned sole sources. And you can get that for free from WIPP.org, or reach out to me and I'll shoot it off to you. But Google the WOSB sole source process with the acronym WIPP, WIPP, and you should go to that page that has the 4 steps that you must satisfy to get the woman-owned sole source. I think that was the second half of the question.
The first part was, can sole source be applied along with the simplified acquisition?
Absolutely. Yes. The easier it is the easier you make it to do business with you. If you have that sole source vehicle, it can be anything from a couple of thousand up to 4 million for services and up to 6.5 million for manufacturing. Sole sourceability across all socioeconomic categories.
Okay, and then as a follow-up to that, here is another question on that. The simplified acquisition, with the increased, authority on that, can it only apply to COVID-19 related purchases?
No, that's an excellent question. So it relates to anything that the government needs right now. So it is applicable to all purchases within that range.
Okay, excellent. Good. And a question came up, when you were talking about SAM.gov, are you referring to the old SAM or the beta SAM website, or does it matter?
It matters, and the beta SAM is only opportunities right now. So this is the legacy SAM, sam.gov. That's where the disaster response registry is, the old SAM.
Okay. And then is there anything you can do, and this was a question that came up, an opportunity came up with Department of Veteran Affairs, who wanted to sole source to a particular business, but the CO did an RFP. Is there anything you can do when that happens?
I'm not a lawyer, and I should have said that up front. The Montgomery County Chamber has a extraordinary group of well-versed attorneys in the federal acquisition regulations. So I would punt the long answer to a bona fide attorney to answer that. However, one of the things that many people fail to understand is you have someone who will help you with various steps in trying to sole source a contract, and that is the procurement center representative, the PCR, procurement center representative. If you're trying to sole source an opportunity within the VA, you should reach out to the PCR who is assigned to the VA headquarters, and he or she will help you through that process. And even if it's out as an RFP, there's a possibility that they could still help you. But the challenge is, if you haven't been proactively marketing to them, if they don't already know your company, their chances or ability in helping you is really limited. So if you know you're targeting the VA, one of the steps is to identify the PCR for that specific target and start reaching out to them, getting a chance to introduce yourself and tell them why you're focusing in on that agency and how they can help you with these sole sourced opportunities is a great way to get started.
Excellent. Great advice. Thank you, Gloria. And here's a question. Early on, you mentioned some great news that there's an accelerated payment process in place. And the question is, what does accelerated payment mean in terms of time frame and definition? Is it defined?
Yes, it is defined. And I believe that it's 15 days from receipt of the invoice the way it needs to be invoiced. You can't, it must be in a particular manner that you're invoicing correctly. So that is a huge asset to small businesses in getting that payment turnaround so quickly.
Okay, great. And then one of the questions came through, a lot of the disaster response and the registry only requests PPE, gloves, boots, face masks, wondering about what they refer to in the military as tent city, some of the bigger items. It seems as if they're going straight to the manufacturer. Any suggestions on how a small business that actually provides these larger items can get some traction with that opportunity?
Absolutely. You have to be found. They have to know you're there. You really need to become very proactive in identifying who the various decision makers are, all three layers, contracting officers, as well as small business representatives, as well as the program folks. It's not easy. You know, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. But the big companies, they have an advantage because they're a known name. But if you start proactively marketing and you've got your SAM set up to have those keywords and phrases for the tent city kind of products you're providing, the chances of you then getting that door to squeak open improve greatly.
Excellent, good advice. Does the sole source threshold of 4 million still apply for women-owned small businesses?
I believe it, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe it applies for all socioeconomic categories. The 4 million for services as sole source top end limit, yes.
And okay, great. And then what's the best way at this time to reach out to large primes?
They all have their own registration process. Number one, make sure you're in it, make sure you have everything up to date, use those keywords and phrases, and before you reach out to them, follow that Targetgov rule of 3. Always have 3 or more opportunities already identified that you can work with them on. It means you have to do homework. You know, if you just reach out to them and say, hey, I'm a small business and I'm great at cybersecurity, they're going to say, so what? I've got 200 other small businesses. But if you reached out and said, I am an expert in cybersecurity, focusing in on A, B, and C, and I know that you're tracking these upcoming 3 opportunities where I offer a differentiator for you that no one else offers, then they're going to listen to you. So identify 3 or more opportunities and be specific about your differentiators so that then you have a chance of them opening up that door too.
Great, great. For the P card purchase, is it only for products or is it for services as well?
Absolutely, services. So what I suggest you do is figure out a way to market services under that $20,000 limit and describe them, that you can do an assessment or an analysis for X number of dollars. It's almost like productizing your services in a discrete package that starts and finishes. But that gives them a way to do business with you immediately. And you can A, get paid overnight, which is wonderful, and B, establish past performance or just grow your business with that particular customer.
Oh, that's great. Well, there are more questions, but we don't have more time. And so I know you will, do your best to get these back to us as soon as possible, and we'll share the responses with everybody who registered for today. I want to thank you again, Gloria, for this important presentation on increasing business and serving federal needs during a crisis. And I want to thank our participants for attending today's webinar, and to the United States Small Business Administration and the Montgomery County Chamber for making this possible. As I mentioned at the beginning of today's broadcast, a video recording of this presentation will be available later this afternoon and can be found on the Chamber's website and VIP's coronavirus resource page. And the slides from the presentation will be also made available following this broadcast. Thank you again for your participation today, and we wish you, your families, and your businesses health and success in the months to come. Thank you, Gloria, as always, and thank you to everyone. Have a great afternoon.